Okay, we're back in order. We're going to move right down to the public comment invited guest thing, and right off the bat, since Mr. Schroeder has our report ready, we're going to ask for him to step up first, please. We're going to give you our undivided attention.
Well, thank you all very much. I think I recognize faces, so you've all heard me talk about the audit reports before, so I think you'll find this will be very repetitive, so I'll try to make it go a little faster. You've all heard me talk about the opinions on the financial statements. The opinions this year are the same that they were last year. We have a modified opinion on cash basis financial statements prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Illinois State Board of Education. That's the same opinion we had last year. Last year we talked quite a bit about a new rule change that had required the opinion to be modified. The result is still the same again this year, but I will let you know that the folks who make the rules are seeing that you've fallen into what I guess they consider an unintended consequence. And they're seeing a lot of modified opinions because of that. And they are working with the possibility of making some changes that would allow you to go back to getting the unmodified opinion again. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that hopefully that'll be in place for next year's audit. But for the time being, we still have the same explanation that I talked to you about last year. We issue 3 reports, actually. That kind of summarizes the first one. The second report that we issue, anytime we do an audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we're required to understand your internal controls that are in place over how we can accumulate the information to be able to prepare financial statements. If we would see any weaknesses in the internal controls, this is where we would report them. We would report things that are kind of what we would consider a big deal to be a material weakness, and then we would call things that are not quite that significant but still important enough to be mentioned would be considered a significant deficiency. And then in that same report, if we find any instances of non-compliance, we're looking for compliance with laws, contracts, regulations, grant agreements, anything that's financial in nature could have an impact on the financial statements. If we would find any non-compliance, we would report those there. The third report that we issue has to do with how you're handling federal dollars. The federal government requires this extra report, this third report, anytime you spend more than $750,000 worth of their money. So it gets very complicated, but the short end of it is that we're required to cover at least 40% of your grant expenditures in what they call a major program, where we delve into the specific requirements and issue a report on your compliance on those particular programs. And this year we audited the food service program, child nutrition cluster, and we audited the Title I program. Were the 2 major programs, and we have a separate report on those. So usually the part that everybody's the most interested in is whether or not we had any findings. And we did have a couple of things that I wanted to mention as a result of those reports I was talking about. The first has to do with the internal controls that I was talking about. We recommended a significant adjustment to your financials to be able to put the clean opinion on them. You all had unusual circumstances this last year that I know you're all well aware of. And under those circumstances, I thought that the accounting department did an admirable job. But there was one transaction that it's an unusual one. It's only recorded once a year, but it's a big one. And that is to recognize the reduction of the loan payment, and that also has a corresponding reduction in the investment. And that entry was missed. It was overlooked, so we recommended making that adjustment when we got here. Anytime we recommend making a significant adjustment to the books, that's an automatic recommendation because the internal controls broke down right there. So it was understandable, in my opinion, because that's a one-time entry that's only done once a year. But I think we've got a handle on that. So
that's for the bonds that we bought from ourselves?
Exactly.
Or the bonds that we bought from ourselves?
Exactly. The result was that assets and liabilities were both overstated by about $125,000. But it was an easy fix, and it did not mean there was any mishandling of cash or anything like that. It was purely a bookkeeping entry that just had not been posted yet. The second recommendation we had to do with the budgets. I believe the actual expenditures of the operations and maintenance fund had exceeded the budgetary limits by about $46,000.
Yeah, about $46,000.
Out of about $2.2 million total budget, my understanding was there was something needed to be fixed right at the end of the year. It was already past the time to be able to advertise for a budget amendment. It was a repair that needed to be made. But that's an instance of noncompliance that we're required to make a mention of. The last two recommendations we had to do with the federal grants. The food service program, the child nutrition cluster, there's some specific requirements that have to take place when determining whether or not the kids are eligible for free and reduced lunches. And there's the forms are required to be checked for verification that the incomes are being reported accurately, and that verification is supposed to be double checked and signed off by a second individual, and there were some of the applications did not have the verification signatures. Don't know if that led to it or not, but there were a few applications then where kids that weren't eligible but were very close were deemed to be eligible, and they received benefits when they weren't quite entitled to it. So we had a recommendation about that, and then the last recommendation had to do with the Title I program. There was a teacher or an aide, I believe it was an aide. It was an aide who had been hired that the next school year was going to be part of the Title I program, but the salary got put into the computer and got charged to the grant when that person wasn't actually doing Title I duties yet. So we overbilled the state and was paid, I think, approximately $6,000.
Yeah.
That sound about right?
That was for Jamie Mizell, who was going to take the Title I aide position, but we decided to wait until this school year to move her into that. But I didn't communicate that very well with bookkeeping.
So, those were,
My fault.
we're not talking about significant dollars, so it wasn't anything that looked to be a systematic program or anything, systematic problem with administering the program. So hopefully that will not cause any problems with state boards. But if there are any troubles, anything that we can help with, just let us know. We'd be glad to.
I was able to adjust that last expenditure report, so it wasn't even $6,000, I don't think, when it was all said and done.
Okay.
There was a little bit they might ding us on.
All right, that sounds good. But that's a brief synopsis of all of the work that we've done, and a pretty sizable report if you've had a chance to read through it. I've tried not to take up too much of your board meeting tonight. I'm sure you've got plenty to talk about. But if anybody has any questions about that report or any of the work that we were doing while we were here, I'd be glad to try to answer.
Anybody have any questions?
Do you know how many food program applications you all reviewed?
That's a good question.
It's a handful. I was there when they did it. It's not very many.
Because there was only, it looks like 4 applications.
Yeah. Basically, most of our problems was in the verification process this year. We had, I think, 2 that we verified, and then we should have gone back and changed their status, and we didn't. Somehow that fell through. So they received benefits after we verified it, and they shouldn't have. But we only verified, I think, a total of 4 or 5 total. So most of those you're looking at are the verifications we messed up on.
Right. It's a fairly small amount, but it's a formula that the federal government has that the school uses to determine how many they have to verify. I apologize, I don't know that number off the top of my head. But
Do you all see that as an issue in other school districts? I
we
can't believe we're just
We get that every year.
We were just talking a little while ago. I've got one school that I audit over in Missouri that we have the exact same finding, and we seem to have it every year. Over there, they've had a lot of turnover in the position that does that, and I know in their instance, we'll make the recommendation and they'll work with the lady that does it, and she gets it right, but then the next year somebody at one of the other schools makes some mistakes on it, and then we end up having the same finding, but it was for a different school. But the district keeps getting the same one over.
That's what happens to us a lot. We have so many people doing it, because you have to do it at the school level. It's just, we haven't figured that out yet.
So I guess to answer your question, it's not uncommon.
Well, good.
We do see this.
I'm glad we're normal.
Do you see us improving?
I certainly hope so.
Would you like to volunteer some of your time to,
I'd sure like
problem figured out?
I'd sure like to, but they might not like me auditing my own work.
Oh, well, okay.
But no, I'm optimistic that I think they've got a handle on what needs to be done to fix this. So I'm optimistic.
We thought we had a handle on it last year.
Maybe the year before that.
Yeah, we're going to get it one of these years. We're going to get that one.
But I bet probably when we do, the federal government's involved in this, so that probably is some changes.
And about the time you get it to where you don't have that finding, they'll come up with something else that
Check the
they're
rules
against.
Okay. I understand.
Anybody else have anything? I'd like to say that Jeff and his team have been great to work with this year. We've asked them a lot of questions over the school year without having Debbie around, and they've really been helpful. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You all have been clients of ours for a long time, and we want to try to make things go as smooth as possible for you, so that whenever there's something we can do to help, we're always glad to try to do that.
And we leaned on you a lot this year.
So,
Appreciate it.
well, I tell you, everybody that we work with, I don't know if all of you get a chance to see how things are going when you're not here, but we get that chance for at least a few weeks out of the year. And I can tell you that of all the folks that we work with, everybody treats us very professionally, very helpful, courteous, and we really appreciate that. So I like to pass that along when that's the case. Some places I go, I just keep that part to myself at the board meeting, but it really is the case here, and I wanted to pass that along to you. I always tell folks that it makes my job easier, and I tell you that not because I want you to be happy that my job was easy. I tell you that because my job is usually easy is a byproduct of accountability. And when the folks I'm auditing have accountability, that makes my life easier. And I figure that's something that you would want to know, is that the folks who are handling the money on your behalf are able to be accountable for what they've done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right. All right. Go back to public comment. Does anybody else have anything to say? Anybody else like to speak?
MCEA's here.
We're here. You didn't have anything that, we're just here to listen. Okay. All righty. All right. We're going to move on down to the next, if there's no other comment. Go down to consent approval of the minutes, bills due, payable, and the treasurer's report.
Yeah, apologize for the lack of packets this week. Nobody got a packet. Hopefully they'll show up at some point. The treasurer's report looks like this. I made you a hard copy. It has a little green line and pink line on it. We got a lot of documents. I know it has my signature on the bottom.
This is one going in the paper?
No, this is just the normal treasurer.
Normal treasurer's report, okay.
Just for the month.
Okay, this one, here's one before.
Yeah.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, Jamie's out there. She can answer any question and is just eager to assist you. So, if anybody has any questions. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary this month.
Yeah, it looks like everything was.
Yeah, we haven't really done. We have next month, right at the end of November or 1st December, we have the big bond payment that we forgot to record last year. So,
But we won't record it this year, right?
yeah, we've got it.
Got that one?
We got that one marked on.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
All right. Would anybody like to make a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Minutes as presented.
Second.
That was second. Any more discussion? Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger? Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing?
Yes.
Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes. We'll go down to the superintendent's report now.
Anyway, change the location so we won't have to stand up for this one. We haven't had this much stuff at a board meeting in 2 years. Okay, real quick, I'll try to get through this. I know it's been a long meeting already. Our expenditures, if you looked at the treasurer's report, came in at $1,949,000 this month, which is just slightly higher. I think last year at this time it was $1,860 or something like that. So it's a little bit higher than last year at this time. We're staying right on track. You'll notice the big jump next month, and that was something that Jamie and I talked about. We probably need to pay that before the end of November. We've been paying that in November. I said that wrong earlier when I talked to you today. That December 1st payment, we need to do it at the end of November, not because it falls on a weekend. So anyway, that'll be that big jump. A couple years, you'll notice we paid it in December. That's why those big jumps are there. So that'll go back up again next month. Cash balances last month, if you remember, I told you we had received our first property tax installment, which was $3,500,000 or something like that, but it wasn't in the books last month because that was for September. So now that's why it shows $7,182,000 for the cash balance, because we got that extra $3 million in there from the property tax. We still are owed almost $3 million again, I think, from property tax that we'll be getting from the second installments. If you look at our revenue to expenditures, this month looks really good because of that property tax. So that'll change. I made this secondary one so you can kind of see overall. So for the fiscal year that we're in, we have taken in $9,273,000 and some change, and we've spent $7 million for the year. That doesn't mean we only have $2 million left, but that's just the revenues versus receipts for this fiscal year. Well, I'm going to try to keep track of that a little bit. Last month, if you remember, we talked about investments. I wanted to hit on that one more time. We went back and basically I talked to both banks locally. I didn't talk to any other institutions. We mainly do our business with the local banks. So I talked to City National. Steve Vogt offered us 2.25 on a CD with no early termination fees. So basically it's like a CD but not a CD. We can take it out anytime if we need it. Which was helpful for us because we didn't want to tie up money for a long-term investment. So we went with that one over the money market that Shane Lloyd had explained at the last board meeting. However, we still are using that money market because with the CD we're going to get an interest check every month of about $7,000 and something, and we're going to roll that into the money market at Banterra. So the interest will be making 1.75 interest. And that's how we kind of utilize both. So we're trying to spread it over both local institutions, and we're very thankful for both banks to offer us that, because the 2.25 on a CD is pretty good with no early termination, and that was after the Feds just lowered the interest rate that week. If you remember the week that we had a meeting, that Friday the Feds lowered the interest rates again a little bit, but they still honored that. So that's our investment that we've made so far. Does anybody have any questions about that? It was a 1-year note on the CD, but we can get at it at any point in time. So, as far as the board goals, I've set some different charts in there this time. Last time we talked about the star reading charts. This is our tier groups for RTI services. So we've had 2 data points this year. The first data point, 45% of our kids K through 6 were in tier 1. That means at or above grade level. And that's typically low when they first come back from summer, because a lot of our kids, there's a little summer backslide and they haven't been reading as much. The second data point that we had at the end of the first 9 weeks, in mid to late October, that went up to 66% of our K through 6 on grade level. So I just wanted to kind of show you that. I also have it broken down by specific grade level these are grade levels for the whole district, so you can look at that. What areas, this allows us to see what grade levels we had the most improvement on. We saw improvement on all of them. It's probably a fair point to note, the earlier elementary levels, you're going to see more improvement, larger gains, because of the nature of it. As you get in the upper elementary, it becomes harder to make those gains because the reading becomes more difficult to advance. So, but they're still making gains, so we're really proud of our data so far, and all the teachers are working really hard. I mentioned last time our learning walks. We're trying to get into classrooms a lot more as an administrative team. To date, we've had 274 total classroom observations this year, which is a lot higher than we had last year, and we're hearing a lot of good things coming from those, and some things you're going to see moving forward. I've asked the principals to start shadowing each other some, to get ideas at other buildings and bring those ideas back so we can start operating more like a unit district. And then we're also sending teachers out. And I know Mr. Conkle sent some teachers to, where did you send a couple teachers to? Miss Douglas went to
into junior highs, into Unity,
and we're starting to use more of that. Our thinking here is we have good things going on in every classroom, and we're keeping it to ourselves right now, so we want to try to open those doors and get teachers to share ideas, and hopefully see a lot of good things. I've been in a few classrooms, and every time I go in one, I see something that I didn't know was occurring, and it's always a positive experience of some sort. So we're just trying to do more of that and share that with others. You'll see more of this as we go through the year. Also, last time I talked about the summative designations. Michelle got that in the paper for us last week, I believe it was. Was it last week, Michelle? So I included some statistics in here. I've shared some of this with you before, but now we have our official ratings. And we're very proud of all of our schools and where we ended up from last year. This is all from last year, so this is FY19 summative ratings. But all of our schools were commendable, and Unity was exemplary. And exemplary means it's the top 10% of all schools in Illinois, all elementary schools. They separate elementary and high school out. And a couple of our schools were right at the bar for exemplary. So I also have that data, and I include the growth percentile because the growth percentile is half of that summative data now, which means basically they're comparing kids with the same proficiency levels year to year and seeing how our kids grow compared to those other kids. And what we're seeing is our kids are growing more than the state average, which is what we want to see, which means our teachers are better. Essentially. So that's what it shows. Whenever you look at the summative ratings, this chart is the telling one. If you look in your handout, I've added the cut scores in there. So the exemplary cut scores was just over 80, and Unity got 82, came in with an 82. That's why they're exemplary. But you'll notice Franklin and Jefferson were just right there, within a couple points away from being exemplary. And then our other schools, we still have some opportunities for improvement, and we're looking at what we can do there, and I'll show you some of the data we were looking at. But we're really proud of all of our schools and where they came in at. This is the same thing for high school. It's a totally separate performance rating, so you can see where they were. And again, we have opportunities for growth, so it's not like this is the end all for everything. I included some comparative data. And there's a website that I'll share with you. I think I shared with the board already today. I'll go back and make sure I emailed that because I forget sometimes. But did I email that to you? Okay, so on the comparative data website, you can actually hover over these dots that are on there because they're hard to see. But these are all the schools around us and where we are compared to them. And there's two things that you have to look at for this. So I have the language arts growth percentile on here, and all the schools, the stars are our schools. And then I also have the language arts, the language arts proficiency rating, because you have to look at that too. Now, proficiency doesn't carry as much weight in the summative score anymore. When it was No Child Left Behind, this is all that mattered, was proficiency. How many of your kids meet succeeds? Now it's a part of the equation, but it's smaller than growth. But I think it's important to look at both of them, because if you look at some of these, for example, if you look at Franklin Elementary for ELA, their proficiency rating is so high that it's going to be hard to get a large growth rating. And if you think about that, the higher you are, proficiency, the better you are at something, the harder it is to grow. If you're not very good at something, you can't do any of it, you've got a huge opportunity for growth, right? So I think that's something to take into account when you're looking at these scores. Even though growth is the bigger portion of the equation, we have to look at where they're at proficiency too to see what opportunities for growth you have, because Franklin does not have a lot of opportunity for growth in math, and that's going to be tricky to do. Not impossible to do, just tricky. So we're looking at this data to try to identify areas in which we can grow. For example, when we looked at math growth percentile, Jefferson grew at higher than anyone else in our district in math last year for a growth percentile. But when you look at it for just overall proficiency, Franklin was higher. We just look at those areas and we're trying to identify where we have opportunities to grow and get better even next year. And so, for example, Unity was exemplary this year. Their challenge next year is going to be harder than ever to remain exemplary because of that growth factor. Because they achieved so much growth last year, the state's going to take that growth and compare those kids to the kids that scored that same level this year, and then they're going to have to still grow leaps and bounds ahead of that group, which is going to be harder. And that's what we've challenged them to do, and it can be done. And obviously, I think we identified an area, Brooke, for math that you have opportunity for growth as well, because ELA, I think, is what you guys grew, most. So we're looking at both, but I think it's important to take both into account. They call this multiple measures for the summative ratings for a reason. There are multiple things to look at, and I think you have to kind of look at both proficiency and growth and kind of look at both of them together to see where our opportunities are, and also to see how well we're doing. Because I think it wouldn't be right to just totally dismiss some of our schools that have a very high proficiency but aren't growing as high. There's still opportunity to get better, but you got to take that into consideration. We've already have a pretty high proficiency there, so you got to take both of them. And I've prepared that data for you. And there's a website. If you look at the website I sent you, you can hover over all these dots and it'll tell you the name of the school. So you don't have to try to line them up. So if you look at that link I gave you. And there's the high school one. We're right in the middle of the pack. We definitely have some ground to make up in high school, particularly in math, for whatever reason. But this is totally based on the SAT. And I think, now it's the same for all high schools in Illinois, so this is not like an excuse. But we did so much work here at Massac County High School, and Andy can tell you this because he was in on it, when we were ACT driven, and I felt like we were actually gaining some ground on the ACT. I don't know how you felt. And then they pulled the rug out from under us and switched to SAT, and it's a totally different animal. And we clearly do not have that figured out yet. I mean, the teachers have been working on it, but it's totally different. And so I have not taken the SAT. I can't speak specifically for it, but I know it's a totally different animal. So all of this is based on the ACT now. Or excuse me, SAT. We used to be ACT. I also included some enrollment trends. I forgot to mention this last time, and Kathy had asked me about it, so I wanted to hit this again. Our total enrollment has gone down by one student since August, but I think it's important to note that even so, all of our schools have dropped except one, and that's Metropolis Elementary School, who has increased quite a bit, which is unusual. Typically, most schools lose kids throughout the year, at least in Massac County. We usually start with our highest enrollment, and we go down from there. Metropolis Elementary School is still growing, And you got another one or two today, didn't you?
5 last week, another one.
Yeah. It's an unusual kind of phenomenon. So we have grown a little bit. Jefferson's got 3 more kids. Some of them have stayed almost the same. The high school generally drops over the year, but Metropolis Elementary kind of stands out. So if they weren't doing that, we would definitely be on the downward trend. But for whatever reason, people are moving to Metropolis Elementary. And that's not usual for you, right? This is an atypical year for some of this. You've got more ins than outs, doesn't it usually wash?
There's a lot of mobility, but for some reason, we have stayed above the majority of the year.
Anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
In fact, a month and a half when we had an officer student in the game, everything had been on the game clock.
Yeah, and typically Metropolis Elementary School is a high mobility, so there's a lot of ins, a lot of outs. But we're getting more ins.
In the last month, we started to see more of the in and out.
Oh, yeah.
Balance.
And that's typical of any school with those socioeconomic statistics, but I think it's interesting to note. On the facility updates, we have sent out a survey to the affected staff members, so that would be Jefferson, Unity, Franklin, on a potential grant application. Again, this is just gearing up for the application, so we're doing our homework. The next step is meetings with each staff group. Mr. Basinger's other guy that does this emailed me. He wants to meet with the teacher group. He wants to meet with the principal group, the special ed teachers separate, etc. And they do all this in preparation for plans to be developed. And you got to have the plans to be developed and done before you can apply for the grant. So we're all still working on homework to apply for a grant. So I just want to keep reiterating that. We've been talking about this a lot. And no plans have been made. We still don't even know if the grant's going to be released on time. They're saying it's going to be released in March. So we still have a little time, but we've got to get our ducks in a row if we're going to be one of the first to apply. And again, that's just to see if we have an opportunity to get any grant funds. So I want to kind of keep you updated on that. That's where we're at on that. It is moving along. It's just a lot slower process than what I thought. So the next step, we'll be having meetings, I think sometime after Thanksgiving, with the groups of affected teachers that a new building would impact, and then they'll start sharing the plans with the board and the grant application and asking the questions that they need to ask about that. I think that's the way that's going to work. You guys have any questions about that process or anything? So still working on that. However, the maintenance grant, keep that in mind, that's separate. That's supposedly coming out early December. And Don, I know you were around last time we did a couple of those maintenance grants. The maintenance grants would be more specifically maintenance oriented. We were looking to do some of our ADA non-compliance stuff with the maintenance grant because they would match. So we could use our health, life, safety bond money and match it with a grant. And it's about 50-50 for most things, he said. So, for example, the bathrooms at the football stadium, not only could a wheelchair not get in them, but an elderly person could not probably get into those bathrooms. They're totally non-compliant. That would be an example of what a maintenance grant could do, among other things. And it would match 50-50. So there are some issues like that we have to take care of. Also, I had a board member ask me what the deal was with the SRO, and so I started talking with Mr. Kaler because there's been rumors of an SRO officer. I've even been told by a couple different people that I was hiring someone. One of them wanted to know when I was going to interview somebody. We have no plans to hire an SRO for Massac Unit 1, but I did talk to Chad Kaler, and he has made plans to provide an SRO if the board is willing to allow him to do so. And so I did get to meet with him for the first time last Thursday, and he provided some details on what he was thinking. And the gist of it is he could possibly, this is all just talking, so there's no motions being made. I just want to throw this to you so you guys can be thinking about it. But Mr. Kaler said he could provide a school resource officer paid for by the sheriff's department totally, provide the vehicle, equipment, etc. But what he suggested was to split that person between Brookport, Franklin, Jefferson, and Unity because of the response time limitations that the Sheriff's Department has. The Sheriff's Department covers all of those schools, even Brookport. And so this school, the junior high and the elementary, are covered by the city of Metropolis. And the response time here is really, really quick. The response time for the Sheriff's Department, which doesn't have as many people on duty at times and is much farther away, is much higher at Jefferson, Unity, etc., even Brookport. So that's what he suggested. We're still just talking. And again, that would be at no expense to the district. And then, of course, we would want to try to move forward with something. I voiced my concerns with an SRO officer before. I don't think it's the answer for everything, to be honest with you. But I think we're coming to a point in this day and age where every school in the United States is going to end up with an SRO. That's just going to happen. We're already charged right now with doing threat assessments and making threat plans, and those laws are getting more tough and more tough coming down the pipe. Eventually, the state's going to require us to have an SRO. I guarantee you. That's coming at some point. It may be after I'm gone, but that's just the world we live in now. And like I said, I've voiced my concerns with that, and I do not like the idea of making schools look like and feel like prisons, but at the same time, we have to do what we have to do to keep our kids safe, and I get that part too. So I thanked Chad. This was all his idea. He's already had some officers trained, because that's a special training apparently for SRO, and he's paid for that. So he has people that are ready to go if we can work out some kind of understanding. So I told him I would just present it to you guys to think about, and then we'll follow up in December and see if you have any questions. He said feel free to reach out to him if you have questions, if you want to know, if you have concerns. My biggest concern is, where you're putting them, how you're trying to cover those schools, logistics. That's hard to do. Typically, if you're splitting them between schools, it's going to be hard to have that person there at the opportune moment. However, having someone dedicated to that would mean that they were available at the drop of a hat to go to a call, which, if I understood Mr. Kaler correctly, there are times now, especially during court days for traffic court or whatever, that no one is available for a call out in the field. They're all tied up in court or somewhere. Obviously, they could leave, but they're not out and about patrolling several days during the month. This would guarantee one officer at least being out there. So, something to think about. Again, I'm just relaying this information to you. I did thank Chad because I think it's a pretty generous offer, because this is not a cheap implementation. This is a rather expensive implementation. So we'll talk more about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Chad Kaler. And then just for some upcoming dates for everybody, hopefully I haven't messed these up, but I wanted to point out for Michelle that we do have, over Christmas break, we're out Monday, December 23rd through Friday, January 3rd. The kids are out, but January 3rd is a teacher in service. So I don't want to get parents confused. The kids won't be coming back on that January 3rd, but the teachers will. I just want to try to make that point. We have a 2 p.m. dismissal for Thanksgiving on Tuesday, and a 2 p.m. dismissal that Friday before Christmas, like we always do. And also the calendar, we have the amended calendar. If you saw that on the agenda, that's simply for the snow day we had to use, which is probably one of the earliest snow days I think we've ever had to use. But the roads were pretty slick that day. We had several wrecks, I think.
Very slick. The buses would have been getting out, and I'm sure probably all the parking lots.
Yeah, our parking lot, actually the parking lot here was a wreck, because it just pulls up on this northern end and then freezes. Last time Larry had to help us with salt just to get it thawed out. It's tough because the blade you can't blade the ice off. No. That's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for that update. Mr. Kaler's proposal is very enticing.
Yeah, it's just something to think about.
Yep. And we're going to move down to the unfinished business for operations and maintenance. You want to?
Just that one's still just tabled. We're waiting on the architect to finalize those plans, and I already touched on some of that.
All right, then we'll go on to new business. Consideration of adding Jamie Mitchell as a signature for the City National Bank and Parrot Bank.
Yeah, Kathy might be able to explain this better, but technically we should have 2 signatures on everything, and we never have for whatever reason. We've always had a double accountability system in-house, but this would actually provide 2 signatures on our checks and in our accounts. So I think it's a smart move.
I need a motion to accept that.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. Any more discussion on that?
I was just going to mention, right now, I'm the only one that can sign these accounts, except for whatever Kim Farmer does. Does she do the activity?
Yeah,
She's activity. And it probably really wouldn't hurt to have a second signature. And I'm not talking about 2 people signing at one time. I'm just talking about if something happens to her.
Yeah.
Because right now, if something happens to me,
Nobody gets paid.
Well, yeah, that's,
save a lot of money.
We'd have to have an emergency meeting.
Yeah, you think, I mean, we have to do what we had to do last year.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we've never had that before.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I think it is too.
Treasure.
Lisa, roll call?
Mr. Berger, Mr. Cook,
yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing,
Abstain.
Mr. Summer,
Yes.
Ms. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes. Next would be the consideration of adding Edward D. Jones as a eligible advisor for the staff with the 4030B plans with the new information. I think you have
Yeah.
something.
Yes.
Kathy can explain this better. I just misstated something last time, and I didn't want that motion to stand with the wrong wording, so I wanted everyone to understand what's going on. So-
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to clarify our previously approved motion that allowed Edward Jones advisors to discuss the 403B plans with staff. And the motion that I'm making tonight is to approve adding Brad Clark, Edward Jones advisor, as a sub-advisor to the existing Mass Mutual 403B plan. The plan itself will remain under Metro Financial administrative control. However, this allows staff who desire to work with Mr. Clark instead of Metro Financial to have him as their 403B advisor. I just want to mention too that no 403B dollars are going to leave Mass Mutual or the existing plan. No changes are made on how the contributions are processed to any plan fees, investment choices, or the plan design. It simply allows the staff who wish to work with him the ability to do so as he would be an approved sub-advisor. The way that I perceive this is if I am a teacher and you have your 403B and then maybe you have money in an Edward Jones account. Well, whoever your advisor is on your other plan would not have the right to discuss, the 403B, what investments are made. It's not going to change any of that. It's just going to allow anybody that has an account with Mr. Clark, and other advisors would have to come forward and request this too, to be able to talk to you.
So you can see how I messed that up last time.
Yeah, still kind of messed up. Okay. Somebody want to-
And maybe
Accept that.
staff here, you may have some questions, I don't know. I mean, your 403B, I'm assuming, is your retirement plan for the district that you have through Mass Mutual.
It's if you choose to, it's voluntary.
Right,
yes.
okay.
It's a voluntary plan. And I think what I said last time, I didn't say sub-advisor, I think in the motion, so what we did last time could potentially take money away from the other group, and that's not what we were trying to do. We're simply trying to allow our staff the ability to talk to who they want to about their plan. That's all. And right now, I think there's a total of 1 staff member that wants to use their Edward Jones advisor for this.
That's fine.
But there may be others that just didn't know it was available. No, there's 2. I've had 2, so.
And that's right, other people may come forward and want their advisor, no matter what company it's with.
And it should be noted, this is not district money. All the 403B is employee contributed, so it's not, we're not talking about district money.
So you made the motion, or you need a motion?
I made a motion.
You made the motion. Need a second on that.
Did you make it?
I'll second.
We have a second. Anybody else have any discussion, any question on this? Lisa?
Mr. Berger? Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing?
Yes.
Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes. And go down to the next one, be consideration of December regular board meeting be changed to Monday, December the 16th.
Yeah, we normally don't change the November one, but Thanksgiving was late and fell the week of our regular board meeting, and then we normally do change December, so it's up to you whether you want to or not. But
Anybody want to make a motion?
If we don't change it, when's
the regular meeting will be on, in December would be December 23rd.
Oh, no, I'll make that
I'll be out of
motion, change that.
Is it going to be held here? I guess so. That's what we decided last time, or what you guys decided.
Yeah, I'll have to help.
I need a motion to
I
change
make
it.
motion.
You made the motion, to have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
We have a second. Any more discussion? Lisa, please.
Mr. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing?
Yes.
Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes.
Do I need to read all this?
Okay, last month we had the reading of the consideration of the policies. I took about 2.5 hours to read through this. It's the same thing that's given up every year. We have to go through. There's some minor changes in there, but basically it's about the same thing. Duties of the board, reporting of incidents and stuff like that. And it's all pretty good reading. But nothing has changed, so if you don't mind, I need the consideration to accept these policies that we read out this last month.
I'll make a motion, we consider the policies as presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion? Lisa?
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing?
Yes.
Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes. Next one will be the consideration of the FY19 final audit, AFR, and administrative cost worksheet.
Yeah, I grouped all those together. These all come from the auditors. We usually just do the final audit, but I did them separate so we can make sure to have them in the minutes recorded that way.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any more discussion? Lisa?
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing?
Yes.
Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes. Go down to the next one, consideration of the annual statement of affairs.
Yeah, this document, we have to put in the paper by law by December 1st every year, and then we have to send it to ISB. This has all the contracts that exceed a certain amount, it has all the salary ranges for all the staff, it's all the public notification stuff we have to do. It comes right out of our accounting system, so if it's wrong, people are not getting paid right.
All right, need a motion to accept it.
Got all our salaries in there too, don't
And
they?
Yeah.
you guys are at the bottom.
I can't find our name anywhere in there. I need a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion.
Need a second, please.
Yeah, I'll second it.
We have a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing?
Yes.
Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Oh, it's Summers. I'm sorry, I answered for, hey, I answered for the wrong guy.
Oh, okay. Mr. Summer?
Better call Mr. Summers again.
He answered to
Oh,
me.
did he? Okay.
He got it.
Mr. Summer, okay. Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes, again. All right, consideration of the property tax relief grant application.
Yeah, I don't know that We have to have approval for this, but I just wanted to, and I think it's good to show community that you are attempting to lower property taxes. This is a grant application available to all school districts. However, they take the people that pay the highest percent of taxes first, so the odds of us actually getting this grant are slim to none, just like last year. But we applied last year, and I think it's important to take the time to apply. This year, we could get a total abatement of $1,136,000 and some change off our $6 million plus property tax levy. So if you would approve the application, and I'll apply and we'll see what happens.
Need a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Have a second?
Second.
We had a second. Any more discussion? Lisa, please.
Mr. Berger, Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer,
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes.
Hey, Jason, is there anywhere online you can find out who was
Yeah,
granted
there's
this?
an award. I'll send you that. You can see who was awarded
I
last
was
year.
like, is it like DuPage County or Kane?
Yeah, it's the ones that
The Collar County?
basically, yeah, it's mainly that grant was for, because the evidence-based funding started pouring more money into the inadequate funded, so that there are some districts that were funded at the 200% level, where we're at the 61%. So that's a way to kind of ease their burden,
Okay.
is what it was meant for. So typically those suburban white-collar areas will get the money first.
All right, I need a motion to consider the amended calendar to reflect the emergency day used. That should be a no-brainer. I knew that. Need a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes. Okay, we're going to go to the closed session. We have to accept the resignation for Tim Lawson for Massac County High School girls assistant soccer coach. Need a motion to accept that.
I'll make the motion, we accept it, and also thank him for getting it on.
Need
He's been a big help.
Yes, he has.
a second?
Second.
I have a second down here, Mr. Summers. Any more discussion? Lisa?
Mr. Berger. Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes. All right, I need a motion for new employment for Robin Thompson, grant-funded RTI position for FY20 only.
This is part of the school improvement 1002B, I think is what it's called. It's a subsection of Title I, but separate from Title I, and it was given to Metropolis Elementary School and Massac Junior High School last year for the subgroup that was underperforming for the IEPs. They're not underperforming this year, but whenever they award it, it's a 3-year cycle. So we have this year and one more year for it. And this year we would like to add some more RTI services to Metropolis Elementary with part of the funds.
Okay, need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Lisa, any more discussion? Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes.
Just do them separate.
Okay, next one would be Susan Quatterbaum, special education aide in Mrs. Herring's class.
I'll make the motion, we
Make the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any more discussion? Lisa?
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes. Kathy Newton for special education aide in Mrs. Collins' class.
Collie.
Collis?
Collie.
Colleen.
Collie.
Colleen. Got you, Golly.
Early childhood.
Early childhood.
There you go.
Need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any more discussion? Lisa, please.
Mr. Berger. Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
and Mr. Savage.
Yes. Last one is Katie Huntsman for MES cook. Need a motion to accept her?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any more discussion? Lisa, please.
Mr. Berger, Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing,
Yes.
Mr. Summer,
Yes.
Ms. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Savage.
Yes. I think that has all that we have for on the agenda. You see anything, anybody have anything else?
I know the volleyball team at the high school did very well. I know somebody mentioned them last time, but I think, was this the first time they advanced to that far? So I'd like to congratulate those girls on a very fine season and Coach Miller.
Also like to thank the people that came in for the senior day interviews with the students. Wow, there were some great interviews, and I think they all done really good. And, I'd like to thank all those that were invited, the administration and everything, and the mayor, and quite a few other people. So, does anybody else have any other thing?
Special thanks to Unity too. That is quite a feat, and
Yes.
we want to make sure and acknowledge that. You've done a great job, Brooke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I think that's just about it. Do I have a motion to dismiss? We have moved, we have a second? You don't have a second?
I'll second.
We got a second. Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger, Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Savage.
Yes. Thank you all very much.